Mr. Olive, how are you today?
Hello. Hello, I'm great. How are you?
It's good to have you on Al Hub and taking a little from your time, that precious time, and to talk to you about yourself, your game, Lost at Random, and other random rules if we have it.
Yeah,
So,
great. Random rules. It's great to be here.
on behalf of MENA region, I would like to thank you and congrats you also for the great success on Lost and Random, the game which was released on 10th of September 2021, just like a couple days ago. First of
Thank
all,
you.
if you can talk about yourself and how you end up in the gaming industry.
Well, I'm Olov Redmalm, and I'm the creative director and the lead narrative or lead writer on Lost in Random. I originally am a comic artist and illustrator. So yeah, I was longing to work in I wanted to work in art, and I wanted to work with people and not alone in my studio. So and I always loved video games. So there was I think I met the art director Axel Trovenius on Machine Games, who made
Okay.
like the new Wolfenstein games.
Yes.
I bought some sculptures of him. He lived in my hometown, and he made me realize that you can actually study to become a game developer in Sweden, where I live. So yeah, that started me on a snowballing path to finally. I studied comics, and then I got into the game assembly, a game development school in Malmö, Sweden, where we got to make eight or so projects in groups for 2 years. So it was basically like a education made out of game jams.
Mhm.
While I was there, I noticed that I wasn't that interested in sitting with one thing for a long time. I wanted to be everywhere and talk to everybody and see what's going on and connect people. So it was natural for me when I later joined Zoink after school. I worked on Fe and Flip, the previous EA Originals title, and by Zoink, and on Flipping Death, and I started working with story and storyboards, and I helped out a little bit with directing, and it soon became apparent that it was that I was the best at, rather than making just concept art or 3D characters and such. So yeah, it's that after like assisting, like directing the episodes of like the silent one episodes in Fear, where you see
Yeah.
these flashbacks of the
Mhm.
bad guys sort of. I got the job to direct the VR game Ghost Giant, and from
Yes.
there on Lost in Random. So that's in short my path to game development and directing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will speak on Lost and Random first. Then we will go back to Ghost Giants and Fee. The inspiration behind this game. What inspired Olive to do or to make or to direct Lost and Random?
My CEO Klaus Lingeled, he's like the creative boss here at the company. He's usually we're finishing our last game. He's like working on new ideas and like thinking about where we want to go next as a studio. So he came to me with this like we want to make a like after Ghost Giant. Don't you want to make like a darker tale? I think we will all had kind of like we like we also like dark moody stuff and while working on Ghost Giant, we kind of built up this longing to explore some kind of fairy tale world, gothic fairy tale world,
Mhm.
and so Klaus, me, and Victor Becker, the art director later on for the project, we just sat together and started drawing, just taking inspiration from books, and like it's a very art-driven studio, so we usually start off with painting and sketching because we find that like very unexpected ideas can come out of that, gameplay ideas. If we just sit and look at reference games, we usually end up like associating too strongly and taking from other games. So I think it's an interesting. Some might find it unstructured, but
Mhm.
we really like it's a great way to explore and just let the drawings take you for a journey. And when we saw this painting of a girl and her dice stuck in a giant board game world, that's where we really like, oof, that's when we knew that there was something here to explore. Because previously we did have a story about a girl exploring exploring a fairy tale world,
Mhm.
um, but we were missing some kind of component. And board games and dice were like, this can be like our own Alice in Wonderland theme, and yeah, like trying to make this build this world around a 6-sided die, you know, splitting it up into 6 wards, one for each side of the die, and yeah, like this, the systems of this world is built around board games, and you know, Klaus talked a lot about, you know, wanting to, you know, this feeling of being stuck in, or who knows what it's like being stuck in a giant board game, but trying to find that feeling, and like this playing with scale, because we'd gone from Ghost Giant, where you're this huge giant in VR helping out this little kid in a dollhouse world, and going from that to instead being like really small and like against impossible odds, winning against a regime. And but yeah, also like to the point of the gameplay, like we still wanted to make an action adventure, very fluent and you know, easy to get into, but still capture this sense of, you know, it's that good feeling you have when you play a board game, and it's your turn, finally I get to play these cards, or now I get to screw with the player or the other player, or that kind of feeling, but turn that into live real-time action was the challenge that we were looking for. And Martin Storm, our lead designer, was or one of the lead designers, he coined this idea of like rolling the dice and pausing time. That's when we were like, oh, here's something, because it is I mean, people write about it as unique, and I feel like it's quite a unique system, but it still reminds me, as I know, like I love BioWare games and stuff like that, and Baldur's Gate, and they have that kind of, you know, you pause time and put out your traps and actions, and you hit unpause and watch all hell break loose. And it's the same kind of principle, but putting that directly in the world, and like the dice is there, it isn't behind the curtains, it's there in the protagonist's hands. She knows it, you know it, she rolls the dice and knows that she's affecting an actual game. And I think that's really what makes it pop. Yeah.
So you spoke about the board game and Lost at Random. Did the board game inspire you to do Lost at Random? And if yes, which board game?
Well, for me personally, I think for the whole team, there was this kind of broad sense of what is a board game, like asking ourselves what's fun about a board game, and specifically a board game where you move a playing piece and you have these events happening and drawing cards, trying to make this big homage to board games in general. But for me personal, as a director, like before I started working with games, even I ran a short tabletop pen and paper role-playing campaign. Okay. With some friends, and I wrote the story and write their character, like they would make their characters, and I would write, of course, biographies or like background stories for them, and it would be so fun to kind of arrange this world for them to explore, and have these little plot twists and reveals to them, and it felt so meaningful. I could tell that they were like real, even though we were just 5 people, no one else would ever experience this campaign that took like 2 years or something to go through, like even though it was so made up and you know, out of nothing, it was still very meaningful to them and to us as a group. So after that, I always felt like after finishing a campaign, I always felt like really melancholy, like in a way that like, oh, this was such an amazing adventure to us all, at least to us, and it's sad that nobody else will experience this. So for me, it's such a like release to work in games where you basically dungeon master this campaign, and anyone can play it at any time, and that for me, there is certainly a lot of inspiration to from tabletop RPGs, and you know, yeah, like it is kind of like a light RPG, or has some of those elements in it. It's I like to call it an RPG for dummies. Because I'm a dummy, and instead of like learning D&D rules, I tend to make up my own rules that are a bit more simple. And then it kind of ties. It becomes this kind of meta storytelling of the queen kind of being the ill kind of dungeon master of random, if you will, because she creates these nuts systems that she puts people through, and they don't always make sense, and they seem kind of rushed, and yeah, so you have to, in Lost at Random, it's kind of like trying to make your way through this giant board game and try to understand its designer in order to defeat her.
Many systems are Lost at Random, but to build up the action adventure, close combat, and the deck building element, these three elements, I think it have been seen on games, but it was a turn-based game. But Lost in Random is like the close combat happening in real time. So what is the difficulty that you faced for balancing the close combat mechanics and the deck building side mechanics?
Oh, it's been a really difficult ride for all our designers, and we had tons of meetings, like both internal and also like showing different takes on the combat loop to EA originals, who were kind of like a great book editor. They were looking at our builds and providing feedback, and like we tried something completely different at a point because we weren't sure, and they were like, no, go back to the old one, and we were like, yeah, maybe you're right, and it turned out it was the one we committed to in the end, because it was quite different. We were worried that people wouldn't get it, but I think we have we carefully kind of introduced the system through tutorials and stuff like that. So, I think it worked out in the end. But yeah, it's the devil is in the details. So it's been a really tough challenge to balance kind of like how long does it take to roll the dice and get the result, and how many times do you roll, and what's too random and too little randomness. So yeah, it's many small things, like for instance, like when do you get the weapon? Is the weapon a card? Is it something you get automatically when you roll the dice? Was one thing at one point, but then we realized playtesters weren't using other cards or trying out other abilities because you immediately got a weapon, so you defaulted to melee combat. So we really wanted to encourage people to explore the deck building, but it's generally a challenge to tweak all the little details of when do you get what and how, and it's also one thing that was we weren't sure of to begin with was, even goes into combat quite defenseless and vulnerable just with her slingshot. And that was like a big thing that was like, we should probably give her a weapon so she always can do damage, but then we felt like we lost this kind of unique touch to it, that she's this vulnerable kid basically always building up her confidence throughout every battle. So we kind of committed to that, and like at least for this game, when she's just getting to know this thing, she goes from vulnerable to superhero all the time, and I think that's a fun thing to explore and a good risk to take, to just see what happens, and yeah.
The story about a girl goes on an adventure to help her sister, but the world building have many side stories, such as the dice war. How deep you need to go to build the world, especially also that you build the world around the dice, like one craft, two town, freedom, and Sextopia. And it goes, I can't remember the fourth and the fifth.
4 Bergen, 5 Tropolis.
Yeah. So,
but they also can be called 5 town, 6 town, and 3 town, and so on.
Yeah. So, how deep do you need to go to build the world on Lost in Random?
I'd say we spent a lot of time and love into the story. Of course, it's kind of where we started while designers were we were a writers' room, you could say, working on the bigger outline, while a bunch of designers and programmers were working on figuring out the combat loop, because it's kind of it's kind of every other, you explore a little, you meet some NPCs, there's a battle, and you explore a little, meet some NPCs, battle. So it was quite easy to kind of work with those parallel. But yeah, we did work really hard on the story, and to begin with, we started. It can be so daunting with this huge blank canvas and not knowing where to begin with. But it was really gratifying to work with the dice as the kind of icon and icon for the game, because not does it only imply gameplay, because it's such a broad classic symbol for games in general, but it also put that in a this painting of the giant board game and the dice. What does that mean for the story? Is this world must be kind of religiously into board games and dice and randomness and we also, of course, what does a dice symbolize? Yeah, randomness, and that's where the theme slowly grew, and we started asking ourselves, what is randomness? Is it good? Is it bad? Life is random. It's constantly a roll of the dice, and if you're a catastrophe thinker like me, I always think like, oh, if I roll this dice, and what if I get a 6? What do I do then? And then I get a 4, and then so on. But if I think back, it's kind of absurd, because what if I get a 3? You never know what you're going to get. And so it's kind of it started naturally growing into this theme about handling uncertainty in life and just being here and now. And I guess it's a kind of mindful, almost like a little bit of a spiritual theme under it, but in a package in a very chaotic, crazy world. Because it's what I like. I kind of channeled a lot of that into writing with Ryan North, who wrote all of the dialogue for the game. Like I would write like little descriptions of characters, like, oh, here and after this battle you can meet these 3 characters, and this person cares about ghost stories, and he wants you to find 3 ghost stories, and he's really excited about ghost stories, and these ghost stories should tell something about where Even is in her life right now. And then he would go nuts and write these poetic dialogues, sort of. Now I'm just describing the whole process. But yeah, we would start off with the writing room, and we early on started out with the world building, of course, and the themes of the different worlds. And we wanted to capture this same kind of, like in Alice in Wonderland, going through these different areas with very distinct themes, but we really wanted to push again and again, like the 2 town should really be very 2, and 3 town needs to be 3. Lots of stuff should come in 3, and I still think we could have done more if we had more bigger budget, but we really went to a lot of great effort to really sell the different numbers of the cities and trying to give them a distinct look.
About the time and the budget, is there an idea you wanted to be in the game but you could not, and why?
Well, we would have wanted to make even more bigger, crazier board games, and also board games that weren't necessarily combat oriented, but there was a lot that we had to cut to really polish the combat loop that we had. And I guess, what else? Like storylines and quests and stuff like that we had to cut. But yeah, I think generally just we want to do so much more with I feel like it takes so much effort to create this new kind of combat loop and a gameplay loop. It took us a lot of time and effort. So I feel like it would have been great to be able to make a sequel so we could build upon that and give it another layer, because I feel like we only scraped the surface. Look, I would really love to make more.
So are you saying that there will be a sequel?
We hope so. We are definitely, we're sketching and writing and talking about it, and we have all we need to, like, we have all the resources, and like we've always made new games so far and never a sequel. So it would have been great to be able to just just pick up the project, use the assets, use everything to like start out a foundation, an experiment. It would be very practical, but it also, of course, depends on how the game does, and we are waiting to see just if there's demand enough, we're currently in a very exciting period right now that we're trying different prototypes and Lost in Random 2, one among them, and just seeing where we want to go from here, and when like Lost in Random 2 could be the next thing. It could also be the thing after the next thing, or we have to wait and see how it goes. Yeah.
So could be co-op, 2 dice, Lost in Random 2.
Yeah. That's a great idea. Writing it down. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're just generally, we have lots of what ifs, and we just got to pick out the right what ifs, and then go from there.
Between the 6 area, which area that Olov really like?
Before Sixtopia, or
yeah,
or do you mean from one?
One craft, 2 town, freedom, Forberg and 5 Metropolis and Sextopia. Which one you really like?
Well, the Two Town is the most kind of iconic. It's the first one we built to really sell the style of random and what is Lost in Random and what is the most iconic city. But my personal favorite has to be Forberg, because I love when there's a lot of stuff going on, and this kind of, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I always kind of describe it to the team as the Mos Eisley of Lost in Random, I really enjoy the look of that kind of casino themed world, and everything's kind of built haphazardly and almost breaking, and lots of wood and clay and rock, and I love the background story of it, as well as this kind of newly built town built on top of the old ruins of a city, more noble city that was before. So I loved the world building around that also. But I wouldn't want to live there. I would prefer living in Warcraft. What's your favorite?
Mine?
Yeah.
Mine, it will be the 5 Metropolis.
Oh.
Yeah.
You like the... What do you like about about Metropolis?
The way how you go and build your dream card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun kind of... I remember I like the...
Yeah.
It's a more kind of streamlined level. You kind of go on a ride almost through the... Yeah.
How do you describe the relationship between Even and Dicey, our heroes?
I mean, it's... I mean, they're almost like one and the same character. They're two parts of the... Like, he's there to reflect what Even feels, and so he can talk out loud and just tell the player what she's thinking about and feeling. And he's also like almost like a mood of her. On the other hand, the more literal sense, he's like a little brother to her, almost looking for their bigger sister together. But I also, in the character description, in the character biography, we wrote about him as a kind of like the dice itself. If everybody has would have a dice of their own, it would be destiny and like the joy of life in itself, or like the chaotic joy of life. Like the life can be your best friend, but also really dangerous. And this sense, he's like longing to explore and live life personified or manifest. So that's what like the force behind the dice in general. But yeah, she's there to, like, you know, she's quick to anger and can get into fights easily. But then he's there to kind of pull her back and like, no, maybe not pick a fight with that big dude. But then in contrast to that, in battles, he kind of loses himself and becomes this crazy jack in a box of crazy powers, and it's almost like when he comes out of a fight, he doesn't like realize what he was doing. So it's kind of that contrasted dance between the two of them getting each other out of trouble also, that we thought was interesting to explore.
Okay. From Roim, Bag Brothers, and others, which is your favorite boss?
Ooh, I have... Well, I really love the nanny riding on her giant machine. I think it's a really fun... Yeah, it's a really fun silhouette. But if I can be really biased, I really like Royam, the design of him, and because I got to voice him, but with loads of special effects on him.
Okay.
Yes. So like we had we got some great... Besides our lead sound designer Marcus Klang, he's like made his own world just from the sounds in the game. He's made all of that with other sound designers, and we had help from Criterion, like a sound editing studio from a special effects studio from who worked on Jedi Fallen Order. So they put all the voice effects on characters and the Queen's voice and all of that. So it was my voice with loads of effects on it and like insect noises and stuff. So I really feel connected to the guy. Where others hate him, I feel kind of sympathy for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will speak about MENA region, specifically on localization. As a video game developer, what is technical difficulties that will face the developer for localization in different language?
I'm not a very technical person, but one of the biggest challenges I think for the translators themselves is the puns and the rhymes in a game, and this game is unusually written, I think, with rhymes and riddles and puns, because it's that kind of story. So I'm curious. I wish I knew more languages, so I could know how they solved like the rhyme battles with Royam, for instance, just because they probably had to come with something completely different. But also just some languages are so much longer or like take more letters to say a sentence. So a lot of quest titles we had to shorten both in English and other languages, or just write to the translators that you have creative freedom. Look at this title, see if you can come up with something that's shorter and kind of says the same thing. And we would certainly love to translate to more languages, again, depending on demand, and how we'll see soon how it's gone, and how Lost Random has been faring, and what makes sense to do next. Yeah.
Okay. How many years it took to develop Lost and Random?
From the start when we signed it with EA,
once it's entered the production phase, I mean.
So that's roughly 3 years, I would say, but a fourth year if you include the time it took to prototype and make, because we made first this prototype level that we joked that you should be able to find, like you could perhaps in a dream find that really wonky old prototype level that looks quite different but still the same spirit, but that's the one we showed EA, and then we started making the rest of the game that took about 3 years. Yeah.
Anything for your audience or your fans on MENA region?
Well, thank you so much for playing, and I if you haven't played it yet, I hope you give it a chance, and we put a lot of soul, effort, and passion into it, and like if you like it, spread the word, and because that's the seed to a sequel, and we would really love to explore more. So and thanks everybody who's already played and given such a lovely response, and it's been such a relief and joy to us as a team to finally see it come out there, and like people get it, people enjoy this world, and it's become like almost like it feels like to some people it's like a cult classic already, and that's just really lovely, and encourage us to keep making weird things. Can't wait to show you what other stuff we have in store also. Yeah.
Random rules then.
Random rules. Yeah. Most important part. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olive, for your time. And
thank you.
Hope to see you the sequel for Lost and Random 2.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.